Hey guys, this one is going to be a little bit different, and I know I'm doing a second video in 1 week, but like I said, this one's a little bit different. The kind folks at Sonicake sent me their latest flagship modeler, the MATRIBOX II Pro, so I'm going to be doing a review on it. So you can consider this video sponsored by Sonicake, but all opinions are still mine and mine alone. Now, this particular unit took a nice 12-day trip around the Midwest before it got to me, so that's why I'm getting this review out right now. Now, there are already some great reviews on this out there. Folks like Leo Gibson, In the Blues, and The Guitar Effect have all done 30-plus minute detailed reviews of this unit, and I will include links to them because they go into far more detail than I'll be going into. My review is going to be more about my experience with this modeler. Now, first thing, when I went and picked it up off my front porch, I was surprised at how heavy it was, given the size of it. You know, and it was wrapped securely. You could have probably dropped that thing off of a balcony and nothing would have happened to it. So props to the folks at Sonicake for doing a fantastic packaging job. But like I say, this unit by itself weighs 5.5 pounds, so it is not going to slide across the floor very easily. The actual unit itself feels very, very sturdy. Foot switches and buttons are quite robust, and the 4x3-inch touchscreen is really responsive. But now we come to my first issue with this unit. It has an external wall wart power supply, and the cord that it's connected to is extremely thin and flimsy. Now, if you plan on using this modeler for gigging, you'll have to do something about this right away. If you know of a thicker or more sturdy power cable for this unit, please let me know. But you know, the thing of it is, I really can't fault Sonicake for it. Every other wall wart that I looked at to see if there was a replacement is exactly like this one. The cable is so thin, it's so flimsy. What I would do is probably get a portable power bank and, you know, just have it right next to the unit and keep that power cable looped up so that it's not getting stretched across the floor. But I'd still probably buy a couple spare power cables because I know the cable that comes with this unit, it's going to fail eventually. It's just, you know, inevitable. Okay, so I got it powered up and connected to my system. Now, it's not as fully decked out as some of the big boy modelers, but it does have balanced XLR outs, unbalanced 1/4-inch outs, USB-C, 1/8-inch MIDI in and out, one mono effects loop, an extra TRS jack for a second expression pedal or more foot switches, an 1/8-inch aux-in jack, and an 1/8-inch headphone jack. Now that's pretty impressive, given the price. The top or front panel of this unit has the touchscreen, a combination menu button and rotary encoder, the master volume knob, buttons for the control and expression menus, plus buttons for exit, effects, save, drum, and global menus. 3 knobs for controlling various preset parameters, 6 multifunction foot switches, and a built-in expression pedal. Again, pretty impressive considering its price. Oh yeah, the price? $299.99. Now that is really impressive. But is it worth it? I'd say that the first thing that most folks are going to do is to check out the factory presets. It comes with 120 factory presets, plus another 120 user slots for your own presets. You can have up to 12 blocks per preset. Now, I know for some folks that would be a limiting factor, but I think their methodology will work for most cases. I mean, this thing could probably be your first modeler, maybe a step-up modeler, or even a backup for your main big boy modeler. Getting back to the factory presets, I'd say they're the same as about most factory presets. 80 to 90% of them are junk, but the rest of them are either very good or even impressive. You know, and of course, that's just my opinion. Someone else might find the presets that I thought were meh to be really useful. But check out, for example, preset 17A, Tape Shimmer. I love it. Now, when I first tried out using the expression pedal as a wah-wah pedal, there was not much happening. I figured, well, I'm going to have to calibrate this thing. That was such a simple process. Press the global settings button, go down to calibrate, and follow the 3 steps. I'm telling you, easy peasy. After going through the factory presets, I downloaded the manual and the firmware, and I installed the editor. I do most of my editing from the computer because, guys, I have a really, really bad back. I've had a bad back all my life. Just what it is. Anyway, I checked the About section in the editor, and it said it was running version 1.0.0. Now, I assumed that meant that it needed a firmware update because the firmware that I had downloaded was 1.0.1. So I went through the firmware update process. It said it was successful, but then when I looked at the About section again in the editor, it still said 1.0.0. So I tried the firmware update process again. This time I noticed a section on the bottom of the screen that said, "Cannot update the firmware." Turns out that you have to put the MATRIBOX II Pro in firmware update mode. There is nothing about that in the manual anywhere. So I went through the update process again and it said it was successful, but then when I looked at the About section again, it still said 1.0.0. So what the heck was going on? Well, that's when I decided maybe I should check the actual unit and see what the About section says on it. Well, when I did that, it said 1.0.1. Okay, so apparently the 1.0.0 in the editor means that that's version 1.0.0 of the editor, not of the firmware. Again, nothing about that is in the manual anywhere. But now I know this, and so do you. Okay, the unit is set up and connected, expression pedal has been calibrated, firmware update has been completed, and all of the factory presets have been tested. Everything is working as expected, and you know, the unit is actually pretty intuitive. At first I thought the foot switch buttons might be a little bit close to each other, but so far I haven't fat-footed anything. Okay, now it's time to build my own preset on the MATRIBOX II Pro. I'll be doing that from the editor. I mean, that's how I've created presets on all of the other modelers I've owned, starting with the Fractal Axe FX3. Now, you younger folks with strong, flexible backs can probably edit using the actual unit instead. And believe me, I would if I could. I haven't used the front panel for much, but it really is pretty easy to navigate. Preset 31A is the first blank preset. Each preset bank has 4 presets, and banks 1 through 30 are the factory presets. Anyway, back to preset 31A. You're given a blank signal path plus options for 15 block types. They're laid out in the order that most folks would use, which is a nice touch. From left to right, the options are DUIN, which I'm assuming is dynamics, FREQ, frequency, wah, drive, amp, cab, IR, EQ, mod, delay, reverb, FX loop, FX send, FX return, and volume. They don't have to be used in that order. For example, if I was going to use the volume block, I'd put it at the beginning of the chain. As a matter of fact, I'll do that for this preset. You can either drag a block to the signal path or you can double click on it. When you add another block by double clicking on it, it puts it to the right of the previous block. For instance, if I double clicked on EQ, see it pops up to the right of the volume block. To delete a block, right click on it and choose delete. That's simple. You can also drag blocks to wherever you want them. Like for instance, dragging delay, I can put it before volume. Wah, which is way over here, I can put it after volume. Again, right click, click delete, right click, click delete. Now the last 4 blocks, FX loop, FX send, FX return, and volume, those are the only blocks that have just one option. For example, the amp block has 63 different options that you can choose from. The cab block has 61 different options that you can choose from. The IR block allows you to import up to 20 user IRs. Pages 20 through 54 of the manual has detailed information about all of the available options. There's over 240 in all. Now that's 35 pages worth of stuff. Okay, back to my preset. I'll keep it fairly simple. After the volume block, I'll add the wah, the drive, amp, cab, mod, delay, and reverb. Now before I go into each block and select the options, I'm going to set up the expression pedal and the 4 controller foot switches. You do that by clicking on preset settings and making the appropriate selections. It was incredibly easy. I'll show you my settings. Now keep in mind that controller 1 through controller 4 refer to the 4 foot switches on the bottom of the top panel. In preset mode, they let you choose any of the 4 presets in a bank, and in stomp mode, they turn various blocks off and on. For controller 1, I've selected the drive block. Controller 2, I'm selecting the mod block. Control 3 is for the delay block, and control 4 is for the reverb block. Now you might notice that you can turn on more than one block per foot switch. You can turn on all of these blocks with one foot switch. Okay, so those are for the 4 foot switches on the front. Expression 1A, you click on module 1 here, we're assigning that to the volume block. Expression 1B, we're assigning that to the wah block. Now remember those 3 knobs under the touch screen? You can assign them to any block in the chain. Once you've chosen a block, you're given a list of parameters to choose from. Now for knob 1, let's choose the drive block, and the parameter is gain. Knob 2, we're going to control the amp block, and the parameter is going to be volume. Knob 3, we're going to leave it preset volume. Again, extremely easy to set up. Foot switches, you can set a tap and a hold function, but for right now, I'm just going to leave it as a tap function. So that's it for setting up the preset settings. Now I'll go through each block to select an option. For wah, we're going to choose the cry wah. Drive block, full OD, which is based on the full tone OCD pedal. We're going to use the SOL 100 OD in the amp block. In the cab block, we'll be using the Soldano 4x12 cabinet. The mod block is going to use the tremolo, based on the legendary Demeter TRM1 tremulator. The delay block will use the BBD, which is a stereo analog delay. For the reverb, I'll use the Studio. I saved this preset, calling it DB Test Preset 1. I haven't adjusted any of the parameters yet. I'll go ahead and do that, and then we'll check and see how this preset sounds. Now, even though I haven't had time to test out all the amp models and the cab models and the effect models, I've got to say that I am pretty impressed with the MATRIBOX II Pro. It's easy to use, has most of the functions that most players would want, and I didn't even touch on the built-in drum machine. That $300 buys you a lot of modeler. Like I said, it could be your bedroom rig, it could be a studio rig, it could be your stage rig, or it could even be your backup rig for your big boy modeler. And with the built-in expression pedal, it really does make it an all-in-one standalone modeler. For those of you that come from a Helix background, the editing should look really, really familiar. I'm not a fan of the sliders, but you know, they work. To me, the hardest thing about using the MATRIBOX II Pro is getting it ready for firmware update. There's a little bit of acrobatics involved getting the correct buttons pushed. But you know, how often are you going to be doing a firmware update? Not often. So it's really not an issue. Now, if I was still gigging, I would have this as the backup unit for my Tone Master Pro. And I'd also bring it to rehearsals, maybe to some small gigs or open mics, you know, things like that. It really has surprised me, you know, it could sell for more than $300 and still be well worth the money. Definitely try it out if you have the chance. You might get pleasantly surprised yourself. And if you're still here with me, thank you so much for stopping by and sticking around. I really do appreciate it. If you have any other questions, comments, or suggestions, drop me a line here, and I'll get back to you as soon as I possibly can. Now, I'll be having all new content next Wednesday. You don't want to miss that. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button and ring that notification bell. All right, guys, have a fantastic weekend, and I'll be talking with you again next week.